I think a greater awareness into all of, what's going on with our world, not just drones or drone security, but being able to go up to someone and say, look, this threat is real, this is how we defend against it, and let's work towards that, rather than simply being in the dark and waiting for something to happen.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 98. What do we need to know about drone security? If you ask today's guest, he would say a lot, with a huge exclamation point. Michael Monnik is a cybersecurity consultant and founder of DroneSec, a drone security service. Michael has built a successful career in helping clients secure their networks. Over the past few years, his interest in internet security led him to drones. He is here to talk about the drone security sector, the risks to our systems, mitigation options, and what we all need to know about drone security. He'll also introduce us to a new podcast that he's producing on drone security that will explore these concepts in greater detail. But before we hear from Michael, I wanted to mention that I've launched a funding campaign for the Drone Radio Show on Patreon. As you know, this podcast is free, but there are production costs, and Patreon provides an easy way for listeners to support the show. Go to patreon.com to show your support. But for now, let's get to today's guest and hear about drone security. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Michael to introduce himself.
My name is Mike Monnik, and I do love drones, I fly them around, but I'm a senior cybersecurity consultant for BAE Systems in Melbourne, in Australia. It's where I live, and it's where I run DroneSec as well. So my role is mainly penetration testing, and so what that is I basically hack stuff for a living, so a little bit on the techie side of things, and that's what's really led me to my role in DroneSec.
Michael, what is DroneSec, and how did it come about?
DroneSec kind of first started when I wanted to record and share some of the news stories that I heard about drones. And I really, started looking towards hardening guides on how to protect drones from being hacked. That was the original sort of premise. And in time, it kind of picked up a little bit of interest in terms of companies asking for things like drone defense budgets or the best counter-drone system, drone hardening frameworks, and I guess guidelines on really how to protect their businesses from drones. So after starting out as that, it's kind of branched out into this whole consulting area where companies are really looking for guidance because there's really not that much out there at the moment.
So your typical client is a company that's interested in protecting an asset from a drone mishap.
Yeah, exactly. And, assets can be anything from a static kind of, say, a prison or a stadium, something like that, to something that's more mobile, say a presidential vehicle or a Humvee or something. And basically, they're looking to protect against these threats that drones might come with. If, say, they're holding grenades or munitions, payloads, something like that, all the way to simply drone spying on movie sets, for example, as we saw with Star Wars 7, or spying on celebrities and people. So really, it comes in all forms, but they're looking to protect against that. And so what we try to do with DroneSec is if we can try and put things in place so that it doesn't place restrictions on normal hobbyists or people that want to use drones for good in commercial areas. That would kind of be our, I guess, guiding light, is that we don't want to restrict this awesome industry by letting the danger or threats of drones get too harsh. And then, the laws and restrictions come in.
How do you do that? How do you protect against a drone or stop a malicious drone and still allow people who are using drones wisely to carry on?
Yeah, so there's quite a few different ways of actually looking at it. You've got the main kind of forms, which is defending or countering against drones. You've got protecting other people's drones. And of course, you want to provide safety and security of assets to people that are coming at them with drones. So, some of the three main types that I like to look at is the wireless. So if someone is using a drone with, say, a Wi-Fi controller, someone can potentially hack into that. And that's one way. Another way would be if a drone is using radio frequency, you could try and jam or potentially, manipulate those signals to try and disrupt the communication between the controller and the drone itself. And then, of course, the drones that, say, don't fit that kind of category. You could have something like physical deterrence, which, as we've seen recently with the French and Dutch police, they've been using eagles to try and, latch onto those drones in midair and try to take them down. So if, say, there was a drone that had certain protection mechanisms that couldn't be defeated by, say, wireless jamming or, wireless hacking, something like that, an eagle might very well be the best type of defensive mechanism to take it down in that case.
Is it legal to do that? I've always thought that because drones are considered aircraft, anyone meddling with their flight trajectory puts themselves at risk.
Oh, of course. There's many restrictions around it, and modifying the flight path of an aircraft is certainly illegal. And of course, we've seen different defense mechanisms have different, laws perpetrating to them around the world. So something like Drone Shield, they offer the drone gun, which tries to take down drones with GPS jamming and frequency jamming. That's actually not been approved by I think it was the Federal Communications Commission. So they can't actually sell that to private, or commercial vendors. Whereas something like, Department 13, they've got the MESMA system, and it's based on type of ways of taking down drones without being illegal. And so it can be used around the country. So it depends where, your asset is, who owns that asset, whether it's government, whether it's commercial, what it might be. And so the different systems each have their own, unique positives and negatives. And each of those are bound by different laws, however you're doing it. So it really depends on the approach you're taking to try and take that drone down.
Of the various approaches, are some of them considered more reliable than others?
What's funny is this is kind of an industry where it's not too transparent. People can't really go and see which systems are working better than others. Well, up to the certain point. But more recently, the military and, Homeland Security have started creating these testing grounds, these demonstration grounds, where they're using drone scenarios and situations, and they're asking all these counter-drone companies to come and offer their, protection mechanisms and see how they really work. Because, when it comes to something like the military, you can't have a snake oil product. You want something that works, can take down a drone. And so to see if it works, they're hosting these, miniature tournaments to see which one would work best for them. So yeah, that's really the big question, but we are seeing some of these work and some of them work well. Drone Shield in Australia has won a number of these competitions and with them clients. D-Drone has been taking in some pretty hefty investments, so hopefully that's a good indication on their capabilities, for example. So we are recommending some of those to clients based on their achievements in different countries, where they are, the laws. It all comes into the equation.
Now, this sector of the drone industry seems to be growing quite fast. But before we get into that, is there a commonly accepted name for this sector? What do you typically call it when you're talking to clients?
So this is certainly the counter-drone or anti-drone industry. And it's funny because you could give it the overall kind of drone security area, but drone security has both positives and negatives. And so anti or counter-drone is really how to take down a drone. And that comes in two main phases. It's detecting a drone when it enters the area of the asset or whatever it might be, and then reacting to it or how the system, stops it. And stopping it comes in many forms. It can come in letting it hover in place, and then someone going and collecting the drone, letting the drone drop out of the sky, or even potentially trying to track down the operator behind it.
In terms of the industry leaders, who are some of the key companies that have been making a name for themselves in this field?
Yeah, so some of the main ones that comes to mind for me would definitely be Drone Shield. They came out with their drone gun. They've also got a number of detection equipment and that kind of thing, but their drone gun came to market as a mobile device, so something very useful for anyone who wants to store it in the back of a police van or a car or something like that. And that had quite a bit of range, and it was able to jam a drone midair. They've got audio samples, so a big database, almost like an antivirus signature database. So anything that kind of matches that acoustic sound, they check for it as a drone, and then they try and react to it. And the drone gun, obviously, I mentioned before, it's probably illegal in most countries because of its RF jamming and GPS jamming capabilities, but allows people to be mobile. And something about Drone Shield actually is there's been quite a big, questioning the capabilities of drone defense protection mechanisms against custom drones that are made from custom parts, and so not necessarily in the databases or the signatures of these systems. The Drone Shield actually, says that a lot of these custom parts are made with commercially available parts, and so they're trying to, track all those different rotors and motors and and make, I guess, a bit of a global database and then be able to pull from that and detect a drone. But, they differ from other products because they're mostly on the GPS and RF jamming area. Something like, Department 13, they've got their Mesmer system, and they really check what a drone is vulnerable to before they try and use those countermeasures. D-Drone as well, it uses a bunch of different techniques to try and track down a drone. It can be RF scanning, it can be audio or video. So all of these companies are taking, I guess, slightly different approaches to tracking down and reacting to drones. But each one possibly covers, I guess, a bit of the sphere of a drone, the other might not. So we're trying to look for those solutions that are overreaching all drones, but it's not quite there yet, I think.
How about the ability to detect a drone? Because as you know, drones have a very small footprint. What technology is being used to determine that it's a drone and not a bird or something else?
Yeah, no, great question. So mentioned before, I've actually been looking at the drone shield solution in terms of it reacting to, say, birds or environmental sounds compared to drones. And they do that with their audio database where they try and, I guess, eliminate false positives, as you call it. And this is something they definitely have to work on because there's areas where a system is trying to face bad weather that might react and cause it to pick up lots of false positives. But at the same time, people might not potentially be flying drones in bad weather either. So, different systems use a variety of different techniques. Some are video, as I mentioned, so they'll look for, certain drones of that type and size. Some are audio, and some simply rely on that range or that radio frequency coming into range of the asset or where the protection mechanism is placed. And if it's something that uses Wi-Fi, you can quickly detect the drone is coming at you because the drone will emit a Wi-Fi signal, and that Wi-Fi signal can be latched on to quickly identify what type of drone it is based on something like its MAC address, which is, I guess a bit of a network identifier for the drone.
Michael, can you give us your perspective on how this sector is growing? Has it been a gradual growth or more like spikes? Have you seen anything interesting in this area?
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of the drone security industry, we've certainly seen, a fair share of events happen to airports, drones flying very closely to planes. We've seen, the drones being used in stadiums to film things. Recently we had the Adele concert here in Melbourne, and some of our readers actually sent in a few videos of drones flying around. It would have only taken one to fall out the sky to cause a bit of a news and media bust. But especially, I guess, if you're looking for threats in the homeland or, where we are, mostly that's faced by prisons. So prisons have this threat of drones dropping drugs and mobile phone SIM cards and money into prisons because that's something where they can, get it in quite easily without being detected. But I think the biggest concern here is in the Middle East, where we have every single day drones dropping these payloads from these, little custom housing areas modified onto the drones, dropping these grenades onto sniper positions, or even just before they were scouting areas, now they're dropping these munitions onto people, onto Humvees, blowing things up. And so that's kind of the real danger here, is that threat to life. And in terms of security, I guess here we're slightly worried about terrorism. It was only about 2 years ago we had someone arrested in Melbourne who had built I guess it was similar to the Boston Marathon bombing IED, but we had someone else arrested in Turkey, also from Melbourne, who had been building drones that had a 30-kilometer radius that they could be flown in, and he had been attaching IDs to them. So very quickly we could have a homegrown threat that could return to us from somewhere like the Middle East, or it could happen straight here. So in a nutshell, I think the security industry of it is growing quite large. In terms of the drone industry overall, I think we're seeing massive increases in things like, agriculture, cinema. I don't know if you saw the drone taxi in the United Arab Emirates recently. And I think with all of those, we're going to see some pretty rampant security issues. I work in security, so I see these issues by nature. You may not, but, it's the kind of people like me that see that and identify it and know that there could be potential threats coming along with these great improvements.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a big need for this, especially as drones become more sophisticated. Obviously, it requires a more heightened sense of awareness of what bad guys can do with them.
Oh, yeah, of course. And we're seeing that innovativeness everywhere. In the Middle East, there are modifications to the drones just to make them fly further, carry heavier payloads. That kind of thing has just been incredible. One of the first stories that I ever actually saw in the drone security space, and one of the things that actually led me to creating DroneSec, was a student in the US. he put a handgun onto a drone, and he programmed the drone software in a way that it could handle the recoil really well. So he could actually fly this drone around, and it would be firing this handgun remotely, and it would handle the recoil okay, you know. And so to me, I'm very used to the world of, I guess, security and hacking, where hackers are kind of, I guess, separated from their crime because they can use things like VPNs or anonymizers and stay anonymous from their threat. And this felt very much the same to me. You've got this drone, you can control it from, 2.5 Ks away, and it can shoot, with a handgun. I don't want to be, scaremonger or anything like that, but he later went on, the same guy, to create a drone with a flamethrower attached. And so he actually roasted his Thanksgiving turkey. But, using it for those kind of uses shows these potential problems where this innovation can cause, some serious issues if it's not curbed down. And what we're trying to do with DroneSec is just certainly, I guess, we see drones as such an amazing space. We love flying drones ourselves. We just kind of want to cater for security in a way that it won't mean one or two people with these, bad intentions will start creating these massive restrictions for the industry and I guess stop the innovation in the industry for commercial use and hobbyist use. That would be our number one goal, is to make sure it's, I guess, seamless.
What's your perception of the institutions or the industry leaders in regard to taking a proactive approach to drone deterrence?
We've definitely got one big problem with this, and that is the current laws that are there today. So even though government in Australia, we are definitely seeing some movements in terms of prisons and in terms of military bases, we're starting to see them try and get on top of that, but I guess deterred by some of these laws, especially those laws affecting certain counter-drone products that are restricted. But, it's going quite seriously when I just saw recently the US military has a dedicated combat team that is actually training in, the area of counter-drone or anti-drone defense. So I think they're starting to realize it, and they're looking for help and support from these businesses that are actually taking this quite seriously. But it's just a matter of time, and it is still in its early days.
Okay, let's talk a little more about yourself, about your background and what brought you to this place. How did you go from computer security to drone security?
Yeah. So I've actually been passionate in security since I was quite young. I grew up in South Africa with almost no technology at all. And so by the time I came to Australia, I migrated, I was really curious in all things technology. And so this kind of led me to realizing systems could be manipulated and broken into. And so it really became a major part of my life. I dedicated my time and study to it. All my study was in security. And then, I went straight into the workplace that was for a living, just looking into systems, seeing how they can be vulnerable, seeing how they can be manipulated, and really just, I guess, doing what the bad guys do before they get there and helping organizations secure themselves. And I guess that just really translated over to drone security. Funnily enough, I actually got into drone security through, I guess, the hacking side of things. There was a intern at BAE Systems, the company where I work, and his name was Ji Chen. And he was showing me how you could hack into a drone. And so, it's pretty much like a computer with wings or with rotors. And so I found that, pretty interesting. But what really got me was, after a simple script, this drone was soon latched onto his keyboard, and he was flying the drone around with his computer keyboard. The operator or the drone controller was completely disconnected and couldn't get back in, and he was flying around with his keyboard. And that's kind of the moment when I went, I can hack computers, but if we're able to hack drones like this, what kind of crazy things can people get up to with them? And how are we going to defend against this, I guess, this threat where people are completely disconnected from them and it's very hard to track them back down?
Tell us about your service, DroneSec. How did that evolve?
So DroneSec first started based on drone security, and that's where the name came from. And after, that whole kind of finding out drones could be hacked and that kind of thing, I started wanting to, I guess, record and share some of the stories of drone security to some of my friends, and I guess just keep a bit of an index or a catalog of them. I couldn't find anything else about it on the net. And so I created the site, and I basically started either blogging or just posting these kind of things about drone security. And after, a little bit of time, it picked up a bit of interest in companies asking for things from everything, drone defense budgets to the best counter-drone systems to drone hardening frameworks and guidelines on how to protect certain things from drones. So that got my interest in there's a real need for this. And funnily enough, I ran some software for a little bit of time that allowed me to see what people were trying to search for on my site and that kind of thing. And one of the most common things that came up was drone defense budgets. And now I assume that's either executives or people in the C-level suite, but people are really trying to question how much money they need to spend on a drone threat. And so I guess that's where I started going, this is a place where people need guidance. There's not much out there, and they really need someone to talk to about it all. So in terms of the site, it's still very much a frontward-facing news and media site. But in the background, we're consulting to help people solve those problems, think of the different, I guess, scenarios in which they could have this threat of drones and look for the best protection system for them. It's quite funny, Randy. It's definitely a new area. And I was speaking to a teacher the other day, and she said to me, we've been trying to prepare students for future jobs that don't exist yet. And so we started talking about drones, and just a crazy coincidence, one of our kids had been grabbing resources of DroneSec, as a potential future career as a drone security specialist or a drone security engineer. And so that's actually one of the problems we try to solve. I partnered up with another organization called CyberSec People, and the organizer there, Ricky Burke, he started working with me to try and find companies, the best people who might want to work in the drone security industry. Now, there's no kind of requirements out there for this. There's no, I guess, guidelines for what you need to know. And so it really is this kind of future job kind of thing where people have no idea what to expect. They want to get into the area, and so we're trying to match them with that. So that's just, something else we're looking at because it doesn't currently exist.
I find it really interesting that a lot of the momentum that was created came as a result of you compiling information and posting it to the web as a sort of a reference library on drone security.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it started, just as this collection of things. It actually started on Reddit as a subreddit, just sharing links and that kind of thing. And I noticed there was no central collection of news and media. It was something that I was very interested in. And when it did come up, it was usually on a bunch of different websites. So I've now got this amazing community of people who are constantly sending in things, way too many for me to actually cover. And so now, I've actually got a bit of a team trying to help with that. But we've got everything from people from France actually recently sent in a research paper called DroneJack. And it was a system on how to protect against drones using that drone swarms. So when you've got multiple drones coming into an area where you're trying to protect an asset, it's going to put them in a queue and then process them and then, let them go one by one. And that's one of the ways it can challenge against swarms. So we're getting all this really, really kind of forefront first to market information that's coming at us, and people are trying to get our perspectives on things or us to give our perspective on their business or how they can secure their own things. So it really has become, a bit of a community based off those just sort of news and media events. So you are correct in that sense.
The URL is dronesec.xyz. And if we go there, what will we find?
Yeah, if people go along, they can learn about, the different incidents, new emerging technology, and as I said, potential jobs in the industry as well. And we also, in the security industry, there's knowledge on how to be offensive in order to be defensive. You can't really, trust that you're secure unless you understand the security protecting you in a way. So we've got actual tutorials on how to hack, the most recent drones, the Parrot drone, the DJI Phantom. And that gives operators an understanding on how their drone could be, taken by someone else. And so we show them how to protect against it or how to, harden their drone in that sense.
That's really interesting. And then, of course, if anyone has specific questions or wants to have their needs evaluated, that information is on the site as well.
Yeah, it's definitely there. I encourage people to email. That way we can, just sit down and talk to them and really understand their problem. I think it is an area where you really need to talk it out, find out what they're trying to protect and find the best way to, go around finding a solution. So, yeah, they can find most of that information on the website. We also have the podcast coming out, and we'll be, publishing that on various sites as well.
Well, that's a good segue into the podcast. Tell us about it, and what will people learn by listening? It's called the DroneSec Podcast, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. It's the DroneSec Podcast. So we actually initially created it because based on all our posts and questions and all from the community, there was just so many opinions and unknowns in the area. I guess we had the tech guys coming to us wondering about the counter-drone technologies, and some people just saying, why don't we just build a laser system that shoots them out of the sky? We had executives really with no guidance as to what to do and simply wanting to know which systems worked and which didn't. It's a very kind of black and white question they want to know. And so it also helps to have a quick rundown of all the news and events over the past week rather than reading each one. And if you're an executive or someone in that capacity, it can really help to, get that rundown very quickly and be able to go to work and know what's going on with the world and all the trends in the security space. So what we've done is we've tried to really keep it to the people that either are asking some hard-hitting questions about the area, trying to separate the snake oil from the real products, and also the people who have created these systems. So we're putting the mic into the hands of everything from computer hackers to engineers who work in the software-defined radio and radio frequency, the communications between the drones and the drone controllers. We're giving it to entrepreneurial CEOs who have made, movements in the drone security area, and also a few journalists in the Middle East who have firsthand witnessed some of these drones dropping payloads onto them or onto people near them. And so they've got some really interesting stories to tell us on the podcast. And so hopefully, it'll be a pretty interesting one. So we're really trying to, the idea is to give a basic rundown on the solutions that are working and the solutions that aren't, how they work, any questions people might have that aren't answered by the web, and giving them scenarios as to which system better protects them in that instance.
I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm looking forward to it. Drone defense is such an important area, and to have a forum to learn the facts or hear from people in the industry who are actually solving the challenges, it should be really interesting.
No, of course. And I just wanted to say drones are awesome. They're amazing things. And talking about it, with you and other people just goes to show how much they've got to offer the industry. And I think we shouldn't just focus on drone security as an issue and a threat. We should look at them as things, they'll do good things in the end, like, securing our homes by patrolling around our yards or warning off intruders, being used by emergency services, that kind of thing. So we can very quickly be swept up in this whole drone threat or drone security area. But it's good to keep in mind that we're trying to improve the area, limit the restrictions that are placed on others, and just spread awareness about the issue, what's going on. Some people wouldn't know that drones have been used to graffiti murals in very hard to get places. Other people wouldn't know they've been used to detect sharks on beaches. So it's a wide area, and it's something that we're just trying to bring as much awareness and knowledge to the area.
Michael, is there anything that we missed about drone security, the podcast, or anything else that we should talk about?
I think the challenges facing the drone industry in creating these systems. So, obviously integrating the correct laws with counter-drone solutions while not trying to actually restrict the industry. And in terms of creating systems and actually finding the one that suits a client, the money surrounding these systems can actually be very, very hard to see. Recently, there was a system sold for around $20,000, but it's very hard to know how much systems really are. So if companies don't have the information on these systems, they're not giving it to the companies building the counter-drone systems, and then the companies don't have enough money for research. And so that, becomes a challenge in itself, as we probably need the awareness in the first place so that more companies buy the products, more money goes into the research, better products are made, and so there's less threats of drones, and that, limits those restrictions that they can place on it. And as I was mentioning before, just custom or modified drones, it's a big issue. I mentioned one or two that do actually try and defend against it. But I've got a friend, Michael Johnson, for example, from NCC in the UK. And what he's done with his drone is, put a pixel controller on it and use 4 3G connections over a VPN, which, encrypted traffic network. And so something like that means it'd be very hard to detect what type of drone it is, meanwhile even trying to take it down. So modified drones really are one of those, issues or challenges that we have with, innovation in this area.
At this stage of the game, when you get questions or inquiries, do people have a sense of what they're looking for, or is this an area still so new that they really don't even know what questions to ask you about drone security?
Definitely hit it nail on the head. People are very rarely coming to us with exact questions on, what type of technology they need or what they need to defend against. All they know is that there's really a drone threat of drones doing something against their assets. So bringing something over the fence, filming them, being a potential bit of injury when it falls out the sky. And so surrounding that, they don't know what they want. If you're looking for a jamming system that makes a drone drop out of the sky when it's detected, that could be very dangerous for somewhere like a stadium, because then it's going to fall onto someone. So you really got to be, picky in choosing what a customer or a client needs. And that comes through just analyzing the different types of technologies that are out there.
Just a couple of last questions, Michael. The first being, why do you do this type of work?
Security has been my passion for many, many years. But something, I guess, closer to my heart is that the internet really started without security. So it might take someone who spends a lot of time researching the net and all this to tell you, but the internet was built with no security in mind, and we're now as an industry trying to really catch up. And that's why it's such a huge industry, because we have all these issues, these security vulnerabilities, that kind of thing. And so for me, when I saw these threats coming with drones, I thought this idea of DroneSec being able to latch onto this industry early on, we could possibly streamline it with security using frameworks or guidelines or whatever it might be, so that commercial and hobbyist drones won't be ruined by these restrictions, by the potential danger they pose because of one or two stupid people. So I guess if we can cater for the technology that helps defend against some, mind I will use the word stupid people, then it will mean we're able to build this industry with security in place. So I guess to do that, we're going to help companies prepare for drone security in a way that doesn't throttle or constrain them, rather helps them do their job while making sure the future of drones really doesn't impact their business, and I guess grow with security in that way.
And for my last question, Michael, what should all of us be aware of as the challenge of drone security evolves?
Yeah, this is actually a bit of an issue for, I guess, more of the security community. They're realizing this age of the Internet of Things or connected devices are actually posing a little bit of a threat. But if we look at it in terms of drones, we would love people to realize that they really are, computer systems with rotors flying around. So little, virtual computer systems. And any of them can be used for danger, but any of them can be used for good. And so I think a greater awareness into all of, what's going on with our world, not just drones or drone security, but being able to go up to someone and say, look, this threat is real. This is how we defend against it. And let's work towards that, rather than simply being in the dark and waiting for something to happen first. And I think that preliminary step of defending yourself before something happens is a goldmine for businesses or, commercialists or private people with assets and that kind of thing. They just need to know before it happens, look at similar events, and then, I guess put those measures in place. And at least knowing, I guess, what's going on in the world in terms of drone security can give you a good understanding as to your business and how it operates and how it could, I guess, factor in a little bit of risk for certain things that could happen. And as you probably know yourself, businesses that factor in a bit of risk save themselves down the lane when something bad does happen. So with the podcast as well, I just hope that we get more people talking about how we can possibly, I guess, talk to the drone companies, the drone manufacturers, and help build security into those. Let's talk a little bit more about geofencing, or at least, I guess, no drone zones, areas which we don't want drones, and areas that we do. And yeah, I guess that will get the conversation started on some of the laws and all that kind of thing as well.
That's it for episode 98 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed listening to Michael Monnik of DroneSec and learning about the field of drone security. I want to thank Michael for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about DroneSec or want to connect with Michael, check out the website at dronesec.xyz. And please check out the DroneSec podcast, which is posted on the website as well. I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting information. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1 per month, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to patreon.com and search for The Drone Radio Show. Thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.